Picture this. It's your favorite video game. You've been asking the devs for ages. You just want to be able to sort your inventory. You've been in the forums, in feedback forums, on Reddit, but they just won't do it. So why is it that companies never seem to implement the features we're asking for? I'm Josh, former CTO with almost 2 decades in the software industry. So let's take an inside look at what's actually going on when it seems like companies just aren't listening. So let's say we're all asking just to be able to sort our inventory in an RPG, right? It seems like a simple ask. Should be easy, right? Well, let's look at the feasibility, because that's the first question that comes up. Obviously, someone who took an intro to programming class in community college is going to go on the forums and be like, what's the big deal? Array.sort, that's it, it's one line, I could do it, right? But here's why that doesn't work. First, the product and design teams, they need to thoroughly investigate any potentials for unintended consequences and make sure that they're handled. So this is something that's often called edge cases in the tech industry, outliers, effectively, right? So maybe a quest does something based on item order, or maybe when you're crafting, it uses the hard-coded sort to understand something about your inventory, or maybe one item has an effect that happens to care about what's on either side of it, right? And maybe none of those things are supposed to be that many. Maybe it's not transparent to the players that that's even happening. Maybe it's just crappy rushed code or things that people forgot years ago, right? Maybe it's even worse. Maybe the whole inventory system is coded in such a way that you literally can't just move items without totally rewriting it. And of course, you're sitting there, you're saying, well, just do it right from the beginning and it won't be an issue, right? And that's great. Physics works great in the vacuum, that's the saying. But that's not the reality. Even your favorite games, even the best ones out there, they all have systems that, were either prototyped really early on and no one bothered to look at again, right? And now it's 5 years into a fully launched game and it's too late, right? It's there. Things like deadlines, crunch, one dev who was just checked out, or maybe something that was written by the designer or the founder before they brought in professional developers, right? Because in reality, unfortunate reality maybe, but still reality, the stuff we inherit is messy and it's not straightforward to make an update work. And that's just the technical reasons, right? So before that request even gets to the technical side, there's something else happening. It's being weighted by the product design team. And this is kind of where it gets a little, Machiavellian kind of, you could say, right? Because every feature that the team greenlights, it costs them real money. So they need to be pragmatic about the approach here. Think of it this way. If it's one day for one developer, right? A really simple feature, it's going to take them a day. But even that one day for one developer, and then for the product manager looking at it, and then for QA, and then for the release team pushing the code live, right? You've already got 50 plus hours across all those people. And if, then you're saying maybe an employee costs the company $100 an hour, and so I'm not saying that that's what they're getting paid. That's what they cost to the company. That includes things like benefits, et cetera, right? But say it's $100, right? For that 50 hours, you're at $5,000 already for something that should have been, tiny. And that's the math, right? That's the math that's done and has to be calculated for the return on investment for everything that they do. And that's part of what the product and design team actually does. And that doesn't mean, the feature has to actually cost money or it has to be a microtransaction or something. Although you can probably see why it's so tempting for a company to go that route, right? Because those microtransactions, that makes those calculations really, really easy to see the ROI. But no, that cost, that's in 2 parts. So the return on investment there, part 1 is retention, right? Will this keep players from leaving? Will it retain a certain amount of revenue? Or, on the other hand, will it bring in a certain amount of new players, bringing in more people to spend money on the game? And, when you put it that way, it sounds kind of slimy, right? But I guarantee that calculation, in some form or another, it's run on virtually every single feature request. Even the ones that seem like they disappear and they're never answered. And maybe it's not direct. Maybe they're not calling it ROI. Maybe they're calling it customer happiness or joy of using the feature or whatever the branding is. But it's still technically just another way of looking at that retention or bringing in new players. It's the reason why, suddenly out of nowhere sometimes, they'll announce that they finally did the thing, right? It's happening. And the reason is because it's finally hit a critical mass. They've realized that the positive publicity or maybe the churn risk It was too much for them to keep ignoring. Or maybe that one really awesome dev just went out on their own and wrote it one weekend. And to be honest, if they did that, somebody else probably got a little mad because, oh great, now we need to spend QA and investigation and DevOps resources on this, blah, blah, blah. But, it was worth it. And it's something that companies need to remember. Goodwill, that also has a value, a real value, right? Don't overlook it. And for consumers, right, for the people playing the games or using the software, right, keep making noise. So you're voting with your wallets, right? You can't forget that. When the noise hits a critical mass, when they see impact, that's when the changes will get made. Look at something like World of Warcraft Classic, right? Everybody asking, radio silence. Even a bit of gaslighting, saying, you don't want this, right? Until private servers prove to them the ROI. And then suddenly it happened pretty quickly. Right? Old school RuneScape, that was another one. That was a technical limitation side, right? Unwillingness to dedicate that amount of resources to rewriting an old engine until somebody found an old backup of the code somewhere, right? And then suddenly the effort went down. The calculation changed and the ROI calculation shifted into the net positive. And that's when it happened. Right? I know, all these, they're all video game examples. Okay, what can I say? I like games, and it adds a little bit of fun to what is otherwise kind of a really dry case study. And if you like learning about how the tech industry works on the inside using those kind of examples like games and pop culture events, why not subscribe to the channel? We do this all the time. And check out these videos here on how decisions are made, or this one on what really goes into a feature release. And stick around because there will be more coming very soon.